All right, let's talk about one of the absolute giants of 1960s Soviet cinema, Kidnapping, Caucasian Style. Now, on the surface, yeah, it's a hilarious slapstick adventure. But if you look just a little deeper, you'll find this brilliant satire that pokes fun at tradition, at bureaucracy, and that classic clash between old ways and new ideas.
And you gotta love this line. It's just yelled out in pure frustration by a driver whose car breaks down. And honestly, it just perfectly sums up the whole movie. It's this fantastic mix of pure absurdity and chaotic adventure. This is a world where literally nothing goes to plan. And believe me, that's where all the fun is.
So let's get into it. Who's our main guy leading us through all this chaos? Well, meet Shurik. He's this wonderfully earnest, kind of naive student. You know, the classic fish out of water. He's traveled all the way to the Caucasus with a very specific, very academic mission in mind.
So Shurik's on this big ethnographic expedition. He is dead set on capturing the real soul of the region through its folklore. And it's on this quest that he meets Nina. She's a student, an athlete, and a Komsomol member, which was basically the Communist Youth League. She's visiting her uncle, and she is pretty much the poster child for the modern progressive Soviet woman. And this is exactly the kind of stuff Shurik is there to find. He learns this toast at a local party, and it's the perfect example of that witty folk wisdom he's looking for. But it also shows us something else. It shows how his academic passion kind of blinds him to the, let's say, shadier motives of the people he's meeting. And speaking of shady motives, let's meet our villain, Comrade Saakhov. Now this guy, he's a big-shot local official, and he comes across as this charming, modern leader. But the second he lays eyes on Nina, he decides he has to marry her. And he sees our innocent folklorist, Shurik, as the perfect cover for his not-so-charming plan.
This right here is the big con at the heart of the movie. Saakhov and Nina's uncle sell this whole kidnapping idea to Shurik as this beautiful ancient custom. They spin this tale of a romantic, totally staged abduction that the bride secretly wants. But the reality? Well, the reality is it's a straight-up criminal kidnapping, and they're going to use our guy Shurik as their pawn to pull it off.
And if you want to know how unromantic this really is, just look at the deal. The beautiful custom is boiled down to a business transaction. Saakhov literally negotiates a bride price with Nina's uncle. We're talking 20 rams, a refrigerator, and even a certificate of honor. So yeah, tradition isn't being honored here, it's being sold.
All right, so the deal is struck. Now Saakhov just needs to spring the trap on our hero. He comes to Shurik with what sounds like the opportunity of a lifetime. He says, hey, you don't just get to observe an ancient ritual, you get to be the star of it. For a guy like Shurik, that is an offer he just cannot refuse. The plan they give Shurik is just wild. It's basically find Nina, stuff her in a sleeping bag, and hand her off. That's it. And to make sure Shurik doesn't back out, Saakhov tells him this one crucial lie. He says that Nina herself specifically asked for him to be the one to steal her. Of course, Shurik has a crush on Nina, so he's flattered, and he says yes. So, picture this. Shurik pulls it off. He steals Nina, and later he's at a restaurant proudly making a toast to the happy couple. Some local official overhears him, and when Shurik explains, all smiles that the bride's been stolen according to custom, the official's face just drops. And that's it. That is the moment the horrible truth comes crashing down.
You can just feel the gut punch of that realization. He wasn't some honored guest in a tradition, he was an accomplice to a crime. But right there, in that moment of despair, something clicks. Shurik finds his purpose. He says, I stole her, and I will return her. And just like that, the naive student is gone, and a hero is born.
But, rescuing Nina isn't going to be that easy. Shurik's first move? He rushes to Comrade Saakhov, the one powerful person he thinks can help him. Of course, he's walking right back into the villain's trap. Saakhov just uses his authority, convinces a doctor that Shurik is having drunken hallucinations, and gets him locked up in a psych hospital.
I mean, the irony here is just staggering, right? The only person telling the truth is officially declared insane and gets locked away by the very guy who committed the crime. It's such a perfect classic piece of Soviet-era satire, showing how the system meant to provide justice can be twisted to protect the powerful. But you can't keep a good man down. Shurik proves he's way more resourceful than anyone thought. He busts out of the hospital and teams up with Edek, the driver from the very beginning of the film. And together, they come up with this absolutely genius plan to use the kidnapper's own bad habits against them and get Nina back.
This is the line. This is what Shurik says to convince the three hired goons, the coward, the fool, and the pro, that they're at high risk for a terrible disease and need a shot right away. The vaccine, of course, is just a huge dose of sleeping potion that they deliver with a comically massive syringe. It's brilliant.
Okay, so we're at the climax. Nina is rescued, she confronts Saakhov at his house, and just when he thinks he can talk his way out of it, smooth operator that he is, boom, Nina's furious relatives show up, and they look ready to deliver a much more traditional kind of justice.
So Saakhov gets an ultimatum. He can either face the swift and severe law of the mountains for what he did, or he can be handed over to the state. And it's just perfect, right? The guy who twisted tradition to get what he wanted is now absolutely terrified of it. He starts begging to be judged by the Soviet court, the same system he had no problem corrupting a minute ago.
And this brings us to the final, brilliant, satirical punchline of the whole movie. So what happens? Does Saakhov get the nice, orderly, bureaucratic trial he's suddenly so desperate for? Or does something else go down first? Saakhov screams this out in total relief because he sees a judge walk into the room. He thinks he's saved, but not so fast. This is the punchline. The judge walks in and says he can't sit down because Nina's uncle just blasted him with a shotgun full of rock salt. So yeah, Saakhov gets his official Soviet trial, but not before he gets a very painful dose of informal traditional justice. And that last ironic line just perfectly captures the movie's incredible playful critique of everything from ancient customs to modern law.